every Saturday. Local chefs create savory and artistic dishes for you to enjoy making in your own home. So add a new recipe to your collection that is sure to be a family favorite here at Scenic Vantage Point.
Welcome to What's Cooking at the Market with Port Huron Hospital. I'm Tammy Korchak, and I am an employee of Port Huron Hospital. We're at the Farmers Market at Vantage Point today on this beautiful Saturday, and I'm here with Steve Paulson from Fuel Wood Fire Grill here in Port Huron, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And Steve is going to be whipping up some of his delicious salmon cakes, one of my personal favorites. And then he's also going to be preparing their signature barbecue dish. And I'll tell you, once I saw that recipe, I could not wait to see how it's prepared and actually get a sample of it. And for all of you in the audience, we have a live audience today, right? Yay! Woohoo! All of you in the audience are going to have a chance to sample Steve's fabulous creations today, so that's something that we are all going to look forward to. I know I am. I'm hungry, didn't have breakfast, so didn't want to throw up during the segment. Just teasing. So welcome, Steve, welcome. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your restaurant and how long you've been in business?
We opened up about 3.5 months ago. And we are just down the street. We are in what formerly was the Black River Cafe.
Okay.
And we focus, obviously the name Fuel Wood Fire Grill, we focus on smoked items. We do everything from curing and smoking our own bacon to smoking cheese and seafood and chicken, ribs, you name it, we smoke it.
Wow, I bet it gives it a wonderful flavor as opposed to a regular oven, you know?
Absolutely.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Excellent,
so,
excellent.
Yeah, first thing we're gonna do today is we're gonna make our salmon cakes.
Okay.
It's the same ingredient we have on the menu as an appetizer, which is what we're gonna go through today. Or you can also order it as an entree on a burger bun, and it comes with fries.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, you know what? Why don't we get started, folks, and let's talk a little bit about the various ingredients that are going to go into this scrumptious recipe today.
Yeah, and if you look at your recipe, that's a full-size batch. For preparation purposes today, I'm just going to do a half size. So we're going to have a half a pound of salmon, fresh. Our salmon is Atlantic salmon. It's farm raised, but it is fresh, never frozen. We also have fresh cucumbers. Shallots, which are a more mild red onion. Okay. So if you can't happen to find a shallot, you can use a red onion. I would just use about half the amount.
Okay, perfect.
Also some fresh parsley, always salt and pepper, and some panko breadcrumbs to kind of bind it all together.
Okay. Now let me ask you a question, because that salt and pepper looks a little bit, is it regular salt or is it a specialty salt or?
It's kosher salt.
Kosher salt, okay.
In a restaurant, I always use kosher salt. It's actually 4 times less salty than what you're used to in a table salt. So you can use more, the granules are bigger, and so you can actually see and without over-salting.
Okay.
So a nice even coat, whether it's on salmon, a burger, a steak, is always a nice way to go.
Sure.
Without over-salting it.
Perfect. Now, same sodium content or less of a sodium?
It's actually less.
Okay.
Yep.
Wonderful. So for those of you watching your sodium, kosher salt, go for it.
Yep. So first thing I'm going to do is, if you look at the recipe, it says peeled and seeded cucumber. The reason I seed the cucumber is simply because all of the moisture from the seeds are going to make the salmon cake a little too moist, and it's not going to hold together as well.
All right.
A very simple way to do it is I cut off an end, get a nice flat end on the bottom, and then just cut straight down.
Okay. That's a pretty big knife you're using there. It's a special kitchen knife, obviously?
It is.
I don't have one of those.
It's a standard 10-inch chef's knife. That's pretty much the standard in a kitchen.
Oh, that's fine. Okay.
Yeah. This you can actually use. It's perfectly good to eat.
Okay.
We're just going to set it aside for right now, but that does not go into the mixture.
Dish?
Nope.
Now, can I ask you a question? Because,
sure.
And I hope it's not out there, but can you buy just a seedless cucumber as opposed to a regular cucumber for the purposes of the recipe?
Absolutely. The only reason that we don't, we buy them in bulk.
Okay.
And we get a better deal on a regular cucumber rather than buying a specialty product.
Absolutely,
so
I agree.
That's really the only reason. I just do a nice small dice on these, and it's going to get folded with the salmon and the parsley and everything else. And if you think about it, you want a nice mouthful, so you don't want a giant cucumber piece
Sure.
being the only thing that you're going to
Okay.
taste.
Now there must be a knack to doing what you're doing, because anytime I've tried it, I just it takes me forever.
Yeah,
So-
and it just takes practice.
Okay.
It doesn't come, you know, just doing
Naturally.
it overnight.
Okay. So truth to practice makes perfect.
Exactly.
Okay, good.
So it doesn't have to be perfect. As we prep them at the restaurant, obviously they're handmade. We want them to look that way. We
Sure.
don't want them to be look like they came frozen or right out of a package.
Okay, okay. Wonderful. And I'll tell you, what a treat to be here at Vantage Point. I took a tour. I had never been here before, and I would highly encourage you to come down and visit Vantage Point Farmers Market. The fresh produce that is available here, you just can't beat it. You know, you go to the grocery store and you attempt to get some vegetables. You don't know how long they've been sitting on the shelves, where they came from. So really, I encourage people to take advantage of the farmers market for that farm fresh, local produce, and support your local farmers. So now that you got the cucumbers all cut up, what's the next step?
The next step, I'm just going to finely chop up the shallot as well.
Okay.
Same thing, you can use about half the amount of a red onion,
Okay.
because it's got a little bit stronger profile and you don't want to be just tasting onion.
Okay.
But just a really rough, small, not quite a mince, but a nice small dice, so you get a nice even texture and even flavor throughout.
Okay, so the shallot or a red onion as opposed to, say, a Spanish onion, would that affect the flavor of the salmon cake itself?
Not so much. It will a little bit. I like the shallot because you can put a little bit more in there. The red or the purplish from the shallot gives a nice color contrast with the bright orange of the salmon and the green of the cucumber. If you put the white onion or a Spanish onion in there, it's going to get lost a little bit.
Okay,
And
okay.
the flavor will change slightly, but not too much.
But more presentation is everything?
Yes.
Okay, excellent.
Yep. And then I have some fresh parsley here, which we're not going to utilize all of this.
Okay.
But the key with parsley is you need to wash it at least twice. Parsley grows in very sandy, dirty environment.
Okay.
And no matter how much the produce company or wherever you get it says that they wash it, it's still going to have a lot of sand
A little
in it.
grit on it, eh? Okay,
Yep.
okay.
And obviously that's not a good texture that we want in our salmon cakes. So I always pick off the stems, because the same thing as you chop up the stem, you don't want to be biting in through a stem.
Right.
You want the nice freshness of the leaves. And same thing, just kind of roll it, and then a nice thin, rough chop, which also adds with the color.
Okay, okay. And what kind of flavor can you expect to get out of the basil?
Actually, this is parsley.
Or the parsley, excuse me.
That's okay.
Pardon me.
It's just it's a fresh, it's kind of a fresh, crisp flavor.
Okay.
And also, once again, it adds right to the color contrast, creating a nice little blend.
Looks gorgeous already.
If you notice in the recipe, it does say for the salmon to use a food processor.
I saw that.
I'm not going to bring out a food processor right now.
Okay,
You can chop it fine enough. But what I suggest is if you have a food processor at home, just cut the salmon into small little chunks,
Okay.
just like we did the cucumbers. And then what you would do is put it in the food processor and pulse it lightly. Do
Okay.
not turn it on and let it be.
Okay.
That'll make it really mealy and it'll have a really bad kind of gritty texture to
Okay,
it.
okay.
But if you cut it small enough, which we're gonna be able to do today, and then just fold it in. You're gonna mix it lightly with your hands after you've pulsed it, and then you're gonna add the panko breadcrumbs and some salt and pepper. And that's essentially going to be the core of the salmon cake.
Just the aroma of all the vegetables and the herb and the fish, it's smelling fantastic already. I can't wait to taste the finished product. I'm sure you all can't wait to taste it either. Okay.
I always salt and pepper any proteins. It doesn't, and with the kosher salt being
Okay.
less salty,
Okay.
it's not going to over salt it or make it taste salty, but what it
Okay.
does is it actually brings out the natural flavors of the product itself.
Okay, wonderful.
So I'm going to get the pan heated up here because I'm going to
Okay.
make one with you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say everyone here is going to get a recipe card so you know how to make these fantastic recipes at home. They're also going to be available at our hospital website, www.porthuronhospital.org or www.downtownporthuron.org. So make sure that you, for those people watching that don't have a chance to get the recipe card, make sure you go and download them.
So what we're going to do is we have all of the ingredients except for the panko breadcrumbs.
Okay.
Now panko is a Japanese style rough breadcrumb that we buy because we utilize it in a few different ways.
Okay.
You could use some stale bread and just kind of crumble it up, or you can actually buy just regular old plain breadcrumbs.
Yep.
And fold it in. What I always do is I fold it in slowly, so that way you don't add too many breadcrumbs and have it be, it's going to make it quite bland and dry. So it's all going to depend on all of the ingredients, how they absorb everything.
Okay.
So the breadcrumbs you want to kind of add a little bit at a time.
Okay.
And then obviously with your pulsed salmon, it's going to be a little bit stickier.
Sure.
Which is going to allow it to stick together a little bit better.
And gloves always a good idea to help.
Yep.
Okay.
And normally you can, I mean, if you're at home, you don't have to use gloves.
Okay.
You know, obviously proper sanitation in a restaurant is always key.
Sure.
And you know, I don't want to be touching all of your food, so we try to be very conscious about food safety.
Just 2 minutes left.
Okay. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to make a small sample. I already have the pan heating up.
Yep.
Put a little bit of oil in there.
Now what kind of oil is that?
That is regular vegetable oil.
Perfect. So more healthy choice for people. Okay.
Yep. And it's got a higher smoke point, so it you can heat it up a lot hotter than you can like an olive oil or something along those lines.
Perfect.
So just kind of hand patty this.
Yep. And of course, a little
again,
salt.
a little salt.
Nice. This is a healthy, very, very healthy. So for people, and I work at the Lap Band Center at Port Huron Hospital, and I think this would be a fantastic recipe for people just watching what they're eating, you know, calorie-wise. I mean, the salmon itself, full of the omegas, and again, the vegetable oil, full of the omegas. So I think this is a wonderful recipe, a very healthy choice. So that's always good.
It doesn't take very long to cook either. It's just enough to brown it on both sides, and it's done.
Okay. So we're going to take a short break with Chef Steve, and when we come back, we're going to be preparing their signature barbecue sauce. So stay tuned and please join us for our next segment. Thank you.
Concerned about the amount of sugar your kids are eating? I have a great snack idea which lowers the amount of sugar that they're going to have. A no sugar added pudding with a little bit of graham cracker crushed up. So you add a little bit of pudding, a little bit of graham crackers, a little more pudding, a little more graham crackers. Top it off with a no sugar added whipped topping, a little graham cracker on top. You have yourself a nice healthy snack. For more snack recipes and healthy ideas, go to porthuronhospital.org/recipes.
Welcome to What's Cooking at the Market with Port Huron Hospital. I'm Tammy Korchak from Port Huron Hospital, and I am here with our special guest, Chef Steve from Fuel Wood Fire Grill here in Port Huron. And in our first segment, Steve prepared some very scrumptious salmon cakes. And in the next segment, we are going to be preparing, or Steve is going to be preparing their signature barbecue dish. And I'll tell you, when I saw this recipe, my mouth was watering. So I can't wait to see how you do this. So why don't you talk a little bit about what ingredients go into this then, Steve?
Okay, we have some butter. No oil is going to go into this at all.
Okay.
We're going to melt butter. Always in a kitchen, I always use unsalted butter. I always prefer to be able to control the salt myself. So we have butter, we have some fresh garlic cloves, an onion, tomato paste. We have apple cider vinegar, some Worcestershire sauce, just regular plain old ketchup.
Okay.
And then we have a medium brown sugar. It's got a little more molasses than a light brown sugar, but not quite as much as a dark.
Okay.
And then we have some dark chili powder, some ground cumin, and ground coriander. Those are the essential ingredients besides the black cherry fago. as we were talking before, you can substitute for any type of soda or pop that you would want. If you prefer to use diet to reduce the calorie content or the sugar content, you can go ahead and do that as well.
Yeah, because the one thing, I can't get Faygo in Canada, so I guess I'm just going to have to wait in that line in the bridge to make sure I get the Faygo to make this recipe, I'm telling you.
Right. Okay, well, first thing, we're going to heat up our pot, which is already going here, and then we're going to melt the butter. Once the butter is pretty much melted through, so as that's melting, we're going to large dice our onion here. It doesn't have to be perfect or anything.
Yep.
I just cut the ends off, cut it in half.
Okay, yep, peel that away. Now, do you use a Spanish onion or just a large cooking onion for this?
Yep, either or, either or. And I always, I prefer to do a large rough chop on it, and the reason is because we're going to, not today, but when you would, if you were to do this at home, you would use a stick blender or a hand mixer or even a food processor.
Okay.
And the large pieces of onion are going to ensure that it's thoroughly blended.
Okay.
If you chop them too small, what's going to happen is they're going to end up missing the blade, and then your sauce is going to be real thick, and it's going to have chunks in it instead of being nice and smooth.
Okay. Now, do we want that on low, medium, or high heat? I know some people make the mistake of cooking things too high and then we burn.
Yep, it's all going to depend on your burner at home. Obviously, in a kitchen, we have a lot more BTUs, so it's more of like a medium heat. At home, it's probably going to be closer to a high heat.
Okay.
You want to sweat the onions and the garlic, which same thing with the garlic is just going to be rough chopped because it'll get pureed later.
Okay.
But you don't necessarily want them to brown.
Okay.
You just want them to sweat, and what that's going to do is going to release all of the flavors.
Okay.
And they're going to be translucent. You're going to be able, they're going to have like a clear color to them.
Okay. That's a new term for me, sweat the onions. I'd never heard that before. Okay. Learn something new every day. Now, Steve, tell me a little bit about what goes into your recipes in terms, how do you think of these recipes? Well, how do you come up with them?
That's a good question. When we were developing the menu for the restaurant, we kind of, the owner, Mike Taylor, and myself kind of threw back and forth a few different themes that we wanted to go with, and once we kind of stuck with one, I did a lot of research. I saw what other places were doing, and I wanted to try to keep along those lines, but twist it up a little bit. So I played with a lot of different recipes that I was familiar with and looked up some new ones and kind of tried to add my own twist to it, and whatever I felt tasted the best are the ones that we went with.
Excellent. Have you always had this knack for cooking, or is it just something that...
No. I haven't. You know, I went to culinary school at Schoolcraft College about 3 or 4 years ago. I finished. And ever since then, I've had the privilege to work under some really good chefs and learned a lot from them on how they do things. And a lot of it's hands-on, you know, being in the different restaurants and learning what everybody does differently.
Okay, good. Do you teach cooking? Because I could use a lesson or two.
I don't, but maybe I'll start now.
Okay, excellent. I'm going to hold you to it.
So when your onions and garlic have a nice clear color to them, what we're going to do is we're going to add the tomato paste, and this is called deglazing.
Deglazing?
I'm sorry. This is called pensaying.
Oh, pensaying.
That's a French term, and what we're going to do is we're just going to cook the tomato paste slightly. So we're just going to mix it all in here and just bring it up to temp, and that's going to give a nice tomato base to our barbecue sauce.
Okay.
Once that has brought up to temperature and is nice and hot, which really only takes a minute, you do not want to burn the tomato paste because tomatoes will get a real bitter flavor to them once they're burnt. Then we bring out the secret ingredient.
Wow.
I'm only making a half batch today. Normally in your batch that you have on your card, you would use the whole 2 liter.
Okay.
But once your tomato paste has heated through, you're going to add, and this is what is called deglazing. If you ever notice when you're cooking something in a pan or in a saute pan or something, it begins to stick. On a hot flame, you add the liquid, and what it's going to do is it's going to deglaze the bottom of the pan and pull all of the goodies that have stuck to the bottom off the bottom and incorporate back into the sauce.
Okay. Okay.
So what we do here is just same thing. We're adding a cold product to what was hot, so we brought the temperature down. So what we're going to do is make sure that this is on a nice high heat,
Okay.
so we can bring the temperature back up.
Okay.
And we're going to add our apple cider vinegar and our Worcestershire sauce. And you can add the ketchup as well. And what you do here is it's probably about a 25-minute simmer after this.
Okay.
And that's just to bring everything up to temp, and then to go ahead and reduce it and make sure it thickens up nicely.
Okay. Do you have to stir it the whole time, or can you just leave it alone?
You can leave it.
Okay.
You want to check on it every couple of minutes to make sure it's not sticking on the
okay.
bottom. But it's not going to burn unless you leave it there for quite some
So
time.
don't go do something for an hour and
Yeah,
come
don't-
back and expect it to be...
Correct.
Okay, good.
Yep. So then the only two ingredients that are left are our brown sugar and our spices here.
Okay.
And once that has thickened up, what we're going to do is we're going to melt the brown sugar in, because obviously you want the sauce to be nice and warm, so the brown sugar is going to melt.
Okay.
That's going to add to the texture and also to the sweetness of the sauce.
Okay.
Go
Now,
ahead.
what if someone, say a diabetic, wanted to modify this recipe just to meet their needs? Because of course they can't probably have a lot of sugar.
Right.
What about Splenda, brown sugar Splenda? Can we modify it that way?
Absolutely, and really, if you tasted them both side by side, it's not really going to make that
Okay.
big of a difference.
Sure.
It's not the core of the sauce. It's just a component that goes with it.
Okay.
So you're still going to get the sweetness. It might just be a little bit different. But if
okay.
you were to use a light brown sugar, it's going to be different as well.
Sure,
So, but absolutely, to monitor the sugar content or the calorie content, if you would like to use a sugar substitute, you can definitely do that.
Okay, and as I always say, anything in moderation, so I mean a little bit, if it's the regular, it's probably not going to hurt at all, but if someone were really conscious about it, then... One other point that I want to make, folks, is I'm sure you've been here before, beautiful area. Make sure you take advantage of the farmers market that's open every Tuesday and Saturday from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. and pick up some of that local fresh farm produce as well as the fresh baked goods, and make sure you check out Fuel the Grill
Yep.
with Steve, because I'm telling you, I can't wait to check it out.
Sounds good.
Okay. So now,
Yep, and then you let this simmer for about 20 or 25
Okay.
minutes.
Okay.
It's going to thicken up, and then I did not bring a stick blender with me.
Okay.
But you can either dump it into a food processor and puree it up until it's got a nice smooth content,
Okay.
or if you have a stick blender, which we have a huge industrial one at the restaurant, and we make a giant pot of this because we go through so much of it. So
sure.
You just puree it till it's nice and smooth, and it's all done.
excellent, excellent. Is there any other tips that you can suggest in terms of cooking?
One thing that I would always say is what I realized is don't try to overdo it.
Okay.
Whether it's a sauce or just something plain. Don't try to overdo it. Keep it simple. Salt and pepper should go on almost everything.
Okay, okay.
You'll really taste the difference if you just season things properly.
Okay.
And just take the time to focus on whatever you're making. If it's a burger, focus on the meat. Don't try and overdo it with other things.
Okay, excellent. Well, and folks, again, if you want to recap for the recipes, you all got the card today. And for those people at home, make sure you check out the websites, www.porthuronhospital.org and www.downtownporthuron.org. And this will also air on Channel 6 throughout the next week, and it will also be available on YouTube. So again, next week we will have Jim Dickinson, who's an IT analyst from our Port Huron Hospital implementation team, and he will be working with a chef from Tony's Food Paradise, and they are going to be preparing a Mediterranean salad and a salmon fillet. So I think I'm going to be here next Saturday so I can be in the audience to sample that as well.
Me too.
Yeah, come on out. Yeah, come on down. And again, Fuel Wood Fire Grill, Steve, you've been a wonderful host. It's been a great pleasure working with you.
Thank you. You too.
And thank you to the audience for coming. Everyone had an opportunity to sample these wonderful things today. Yes. So I can't wait. I get to sample mine, the fresh salmon one that he made. That's mine. So anyway, thank you for coming, and enjoy the week. And until our next program, be safe, be healthy, and ultimately be happy. Thank you.